Well, it's Friday the 17th of April, and yesterday the government made the decision to continue with the lockdown. Now, where does that leave us? Well, I've drawn a little graph to explain how I see it. And somebody was asking me, what is this herd immunity they keep going on about? So I've drawn a little diagram which I think explains that quite well. I've drawn this graph just to try and explain, as I see it, what might have happened and what is likely to happen in the future. So this line represents the number of people who catch the corona flu. The little green line represents the National Health Service capacity for dealing with it. Initially it was very poor, but changes were made and eventually we reached a sort of plateau, which is where we are now. Now, if we just allowed the corona flu virus just to sweep through the population, it started about February, it would have followed this red curve, and you can see that at this point the National Health Service wouldn't have been able to cope with these people coming in, this lot. And so some of those would have died unnecessarily because we didn't have enough ventilators and we weren't geared up enough to cope with it. But it would have fallen just as quickly, and probably by the middle of May the epidemic would have petered out. But in order to prevent this little lot here, we had self-isolation, and so the numbers didn't increase as rapidly. The curve was sort of flattened and reached a peak about the end of April, which is where we are now, about here. So the numbers begin to fall, and if lockdown is eased, more people start moving about, then the prognosis is that you get sort of small outbreaks within the population. Now, what do you do about them? Do you just allow it to continue, or do you introduce lockdown again? And eventually a sort of sub-pandemic or sub-epidemic will subside, and as more and more people begin to move about, you probably get a second peak. But eventually the epidemic or pandemic would peter out about the end of August. Now, this is the dilemma the government have got here. Do they allow more freedom of movement and accept that there are going to be sort of sub-pandemics or sub-epidemics, or do they do as they have decided, to continue with lockdown for certainly another 3 weeks? So you won't get this sort of sub-pandemic. The numbers will follow this curve here, this dotted line, but it will take much longer for the epidemic eventually to stop. So you get a real long tail here, probably into, well, certainly November perhaps. So this is the problem here. Do you accept that there are going to be sub-pandemics if you loosen the reins, or do you continue with tight reins and follow this curve, prolonging the pandemic, albeit much lower numbers, way into November? But at the end of the day, whether we'd allowed this to happen, or whether we allow this to happen, the numbers of deaths will be almost the same. The deaths which will have been saved will have been those caused when the NHS was overstretched. So we saved a few deaths here. But the cost will have been astronomical. The problem with prolonging the lockdown is that the costs will continue to mount. So, whereas if lockdown is eased and we get little sub-pandemics like this, then we could get back to some semblance of normality around about August. And the costs therefore will be substantially less. So basically it's a battle between the two wings. One wing, I suggest the Treasury, we want to ease lockdown and deal with sub-pandemics, whereas the other hardliners, they will want to continue with lockdown and continue with ever-mounting costs. Who will win? Well, we'll probably see in 3 weeks' time what decisions they're going to make then. Anyway, that's how I see it. Now, somebody asked me the other day, what was this herd immunity everyone was talking about earlier on? Well, not so much now. This was a sort of policy they introduced on the 13th of March, but by the I think it's the 25th of March, all that had changed. And the easiest way to explain it, I think, is with this little diagram. This is the herd. Imagine there are 100 individuals in the herd, and the little blue dots mean that they're not immune. So before the disease arrives, nobody is immune to it. But as the disease arrives and people catch it, or members of the herd catch it and recover, although some will die, I haven't put the deaths in here. And the little red dots are those who've had the disease and are now immune from it. And here there are 10% of the population immune. And as the disease spreads even further, then in this little group here, half the population have had the disease and are immune, and the other half are not immune, and the virus continues to spread, albeit more slowly. And here, 70% of the population have had the disease and are immune, and the other 30%, the blue dots, they haven't had it and they're not immune. Now when you get to 70% immunity, then the virus finds it very difficult to spread through the population, and it eventually peters out. And this is called herd immunity when you get to this stage here. Now, where are we on this chain? Well, it's very difficult to say. If you imagine this is the 100% of the population, and for the purposes of this, let's imagine that 35% of the population have had the disease, survived and are now immune. But for the disease to peter out, we need 70% immunity. In other words, we need all these to be immune, 35, 35, and that would leave 30% of the population who weren't immune. But with 70% immunity, then the disease will peter out. So if we've got 35% who are immune now, for their herd immunity to sort of click in, we need another 35% to get the disease, survive and become immune. So these people at the moment, this 35%, in other words, twice what we've got at the moment, in order to get herd immunity, they have got to catch the disease, survive and become immune. So this little lot have got it coming. This little lot have been there and got it. But we don't know what this figure is, because at the moment nobody in the general population is being tested. But for the purposes of this, I've just assumed that 35% have had it. 35% have got it to come. And this 30%, they won't suffer from it at all. And when we reach that point, hopefully, 70% herd immunity, the disease will, as I say, peter out. Now this poses a problem for vaccine producers, because once we've reached herd immunity, then we won't need a vaccine. And as we're likely to reach this stage before a vaccine is produced, probably next year, then a vaccine will be irrelevant. And the problem with flu viruses, they mutate. Every year it's a different strain, and the vaccine, for one, doesn't work at all, or certainly doesn't work very well with new strains, and so we'll be seeking a new vaccine. So although they're going about vaccination is the only way out of this, by the time they've produced this vaccine, the coronavirus will, in all probability, have petered out. So in order to save some of these people who haven't yet had the disease but will get it, we need a vaccine very, very quickly. And it doesn't look like that is going to happen. So that's where we're at. Anyway, for the moment, still in lockdown. Keep safe. See you again. Bye-bye.